All right, let's do another video. Why the fuck not? Consciousness has its roots in the soul, or the soul has its roots in consciousness. It's fine. The presence or lack of a soul, a collection of spiritual particles forming magicules, is considered the difference. So I remember where this is taken from. It's from Shinra Tensei. Shinra Tensei is the attack that Pain does on Konoha in Naruto. No, no, no. It's on Tensei Shitara Slime. It's basically a series about a guy who died and like was reincarnated as a slime in a different world. So let me show you. Consciousness has its roots in the soul. The presence or lack of a soul, a collection of spiritual particles forming magicules, is considered the difference. So let me explain to you the scene. And it's a samurai thing, because samurai believed that if they gave their sword a name, then the soul would actually have its own life and affect basically the warrior himself. Interesting. I just thought of my book, but uh, one time I was watching something, and they said naming is the most primitive form of magic. And it got me thinking about the difference between stray dogs and house dogs. And the difference is literally just not, I don't want to say stray dogs, let's go for wild dogs. Because stray dogs still understand, but they don't really have that personality. And I feel the reason for that is basically the naming, right? Because if I am giving something a name or someone a name, I am creating a point of reference for the connection that we make. Bear with me. And so, what if I'm giving a thing a name? So you read about it, people who name their cars can't let them go. They create that bond. And on top of all of that, they kind of like explore the characteristics of the car beyond just like it having a car. I think Jay Leno does that. People that let's go back to the concept of consciousness. Like I have a strong feeling that everything is consciousness, right? And it takes me back to a story that when a guy was discussing what's real and what's not, and one person was saying like whatever you can touch is real, and whatever you can't is not real. And the guy asked him a question. It was like, what makes something real? It's like because I can touch it. Why? Because it has properties. And the other guy goes like, yeah, there's properties for wood. There's not properties for air. And then he goes like, okay, so like if you press your hand on the wood, what do you feel? And he goes like, I feel wood. And then if you press it harder, and then eventually, like the harder you press, eventually you feel pain. And then the guy asked him, is pain the property of wood as well? And the reasoning behind it is simple. It's because like the property of wood is kind of like the whole, right? The stability, the thickness, the durability, it floats and all those kind of like scientific things. But it all depends on what we are interacting with in the wood. Because if I take a piece of wood and I smack somebody, for example, on the ribs, and a rib breaks, then ultimately is that also a property of the wood, or is that kind of like the whole relationship of that environment where the wood kind of flew in your way and shit like this? So the idea behind consciousness is like everything is consciousness. And ultimately, how different pieces of the world interact with each other come up with different results. And I think as human beings, we tend to complicate things a bit too much. In our quest to understand or to explain, I don't think it's our quest to understand. I think our biggest mistake is we try to explain what we kind of like see, and we're doing that in a very abstract way, while consciousness is very much like a feeling, an emotional thing, a fleeting something. So, uh, consciousness having its roots in the soul, that kind of means that the soul has, does it, did I write it in a way where it sounds like consciousness is basically, the soul is an extension of consciousness, a different extension of consciousness? Because the idea, the presence of lack of a soul, a collection of spiritual particles, right, forming magicules, is considered the difference between whether something is conscious or not. So, so I have consciousness, or I am consciousness, and the soul is consciousness as well. It's a different form of consciousness, and a stone is consciousness and a different form of consciousness. But the stone isn't conscious. It is consciousness, but it's not conscious because I am conscious, right? I am aware. Isn't that it? And the idea is if you kind of like infuse a soul into something, even fish play with you, right? And they kind of like have that kind of reaction with you. If you watch a video about a pet fish, you can see something like difference between it and other fish that randomly just swim about. So maybe the soul is not really given to us, but it's generated by us. That would make sense, right? And I think if we were to dive into the scientifics behind it, like our cells, basically, depending on the energy we give them, the same cell from the same skin cell could become a muscle cell or a neuron cell or a whatever cell. Like these are the recent tests where people kind of like incubate different cells under different waves, energy, heats, and nutrients and stuff, because as well, like nutrients is energy. And basically, like they see how the cells evolve into something else. So maybe the idea is like we, as human beings, evolved. We kind of evolved the soul into something that's more conscious, into something that's aware beyond our primitive awareness, right? Like, beyond survival. It only makes sense that, like, if we are the evolution of life itself, then ultimately, and life is evolving in every single direction, because like through insects, through animals, that's life. We are life. We are not living. We are life. So I feel like there's where the magic is actually formed. And being born is the process of forming the soul. And as we evolve, because if you put like a modern baby back in the caveman days, he will grow to be, or she will grow to be very much as cavemen were. Because it's also an environmental thing. It's an interaction slash trigger. Because like everything surrounding you kind of like makes you adjust to whatever's there. There is a fascinating thing about the brain because the first 6, 7 years of the brain is kind of like just receptive. Where am I? What am I doing? What do I have to play with? And everything is adapted around it. And so us us giving somebody a name is an extension of our soul, isn't it? It's an extension of our consciousness, or of the consciousness that has created the soul. I don't know. Consciousness has its roots in the soul. That's basically what I'm trying to debate. The soul has its roots in consciousness, but no, the soul is a result of consciousness evolving a certain kind of way. And I think the true representation is the soul has its roots in consciousness. Or maybe here consciousness is referring to like being conscious, not the consciousness that I'm talking about. Like whatever has a soul becomes more conscious, evolves in a consciousness perspective. I'm not sure, but I like how my mind is kind of like not thinking anything right now, just trying to understand what nonsense I'm about. All right, I love you guys. Bye.